Thanks for joining us for the third tool and third skill we'll be going over today, which is how to create healthy boundaries and communicate clear expectations about what that space is going to be, about why people are gathered for whatever purpose, right? This could be in your small groups, your community groups, your life groups, in your office when you're meeting as teams, whatever purpose it may be. As leaders and as facilitators of these spaces, people are often looking to us to model not just how to behave, but also kind of set clear expectations about how we will be treating each other and how we'll be communicating with each other. I like to call this making space for grace, right? We want to value and we want to uphold everybody's opportunities to have their voices heard, respected, and appreciated. But sometimes we may come in with very passionately held convictions, opinions, beliefs, and statements that are just not appropriate for that space, perhaps, right? And you as a leader are trying to navigate this tension without wanting to censor people or wanting to make people feel like their input is not welcome. But how do you do that? Well, you can't just let people go off on a tangent all the time. So what you can do, however, is create intentional spaces and opportunities where some of these contentious debates or topics or conversations can be had in a more constructive, in a more healthily formatted way. And I'm going to invite my friend back up, Ryan Nakade, who will walk us through kind of the specifics of how one can do this. Ryan?
All right. So now we get to the million-dollar question. How do we actually make space for grace? So 3 techniques. The first one I like to call grounding virtues before ground rules. Right now, some people might have an allergic reaction to the notion of a ground rule, this kind of strict law and order enforcement of certain protocols in a group. So instead, first ask the group, say, what kind of values and virtues and spiritual qualities do we want to have in this group that will make for effective dialogue? So some people might start saying things like love, compassion, generosity, empathy, understanding. You say, great, great, great. Now that we have all these values cataloged, how do we create some guidelines, some agreements, and some norms to hold ourselves accountable to these values and virtues so that we can have a productive meeting space? And that's where you can kind of brainstorm these agreements and ground rules that ideally people will consent to. Once you have buy-in, you now can enforce the ground rules and norms if people start to go awry during the discussion. So you're having a study group, someone starts mouthing off an inappropriate political opinion or an opinion that's not appropriate to share in that meeting. What do? This is a second skill, is to acknowledge what the conflict that's unfolding and then return it back to the agreements. So people are starting to argue about some issue and I'll say, I just want to pause for a moment. I want to acknowledge that there is a disagreement coming up around an issue that seems really important to a lot of you. And I want to acknowledge that and I want to honor that. And per our ground rules that we had constructed a few weeks ago or a few days ago, this is not the appropriate platform or format to be having this discussion. And so you're returning to the ground rules that they had generated input into, so it's not like you're enforcing it onto people. And that gets us to the third skill. And that's being able to follow up with people after the meeting to have that conversation in a context that is appropriate and say, hey, Joe, you were talking about your favorite presidential candidate in the Bible group. That wasn't the right context to have that conversation. But I'd love to get coffee with you and talk more and hear more about really what's going on with you, what's on your heart and your mind, and how you're processing all of these really big changes we're facing as a society. And I'm here for that conversation if you would like to do it. Or maybe you and Mary were in an argument, and why don't we all get coffee together and talk about it later and hash it out and explore our differences fruitfully so we don't have that argument unfold in our Bible study class. So those are the 3 ways of making that space, making that container for a productive meeting. And again, we'll demo what that can look like in practice in a moment here with our volunteers. All right, aloha. Welcome back, everyone, to the Bible Study Church Group meeting. And so to ensure that these meetings have a productive dialogue and that we can all have respectful conversation, especially when we disagree, I want to start with an exercise called grounding virtues before ground rules. So let's just go around briefly. If you think about what kind of values or what kind of the spirit of this group that we're holding together, what qualities do you want us to embody together? So just spit them out.
Respect.
Respect. Okay, great.
Honor.
Honor. Excellent.
Patience.
Patience.
Compassionate listening.
Compassionate listening. Excellent. So those are all great ideals or values that we can try to live up to. Now let's concretize that a little bit. What are some ground rules or group norms or guidelines that we can co-create together that will help to make sure that those values are actually being manifest here? So go ahead and spit them out.
I think making sure we stay on the week's topic to get everything so people come and they can get a fruitful offering as opposed to our side combos or personal lives.
Great. So staying focused on the topic.
Yeah.
Purposely.
Yeah, I really want to, personally, I want to learn while we're here. So I want to learn and grow. And so getting the truth is really important to me.
Okay. Focus on the truth. Great.
Patience and understanding, listening to the people around us.
Okay. So and what would that look like in practice that we can hold up?
Having conversations, asking people questions, and then allowing their own perspective.
Yeah.
Great. So I'm hearing listening to understand and asking questions to kind of facilitate learning. Excellent. Thank you. How about you, young man?
I think it'd be important if everybody feels like they have a chance to share, right?
Okay,
Like,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So maybe like a step up, step back rule where if people are oversharing, maybe step back. If you're undersharing, step forward.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. So we have these ground rules here. Now let's proceed. Oh, were you reaching for something on your phone there? What's going on?
I mean, I don't know if y'all just saw, but there was a failed assassination attempt on Donald Trump just now. Donald
way.
Trump, and if only it hadn't failed. My goodness.
Oh,
believe
God.
you say something like that. That's horrible. He's going to be the leader of our country.
Well,
That is a mouthful that you just said. And I'm assuming that it was really close to him getting really hurt too as a
I
person.
mean, like, we should be praying for him,
Yeah.
no? Like, I mean, come on. To say that, oh, you wish he
This
died.
man is chosen by God. He's going to help our country. This is just terrible.
Okay, I wanted to just interject for a second here and just say I acknowledge that there is. It just sounds like we just received some shocking news about a potentially historic event, and so it's natural that there's going to be reactions. There's going to be strong emotions in the room. I just wanted to kind of normalize that for a second, and acknowledge that there were some big disagreements in reaction and interpretations that we're having to this event. And I want to return us to some of the ground rules we had set earlier. And one of them, I think that you had brought up, was staying focused on the topic and getting back to the purpose of this group, which is to study the Bible. So return to the ground rule, to that norm that we had structured together. How does that sound to everyone?
I think that sounds good, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we can debate about this later, and
We could
Yeah.
go in circles forever.
Yeah, and I wanted to acknowledge too that there were some really strong feelings about that, understandably. So I'm happy to follow up with any of you if the three of us want to go get coffee later and we can talk more about it. I'd love to hear more about where you're coming from, and we can talk about this in the outside context and hopefully get a better understanding of each other and build a relationship with each other, and just to make sure it doesn't spill over into this group here tonight.
I think that'd be helpful because I think there is a question for me about how I, as a Christian, should be feeling and responding to something like that. And regardless of what my politics are.
Great. Well, thank you. I appreciate your willingness to kind of get back to the structure of the meeting. Okay, so what the idea of that demoing that session was that when you have the ground rules first, it allows the facilitator to have more authority because people have consented into buying into those rules, right? They had designed them, they had suggested them, they had proposed them. When you start with the values and the virtues first, it's really a great vibe or mood generator. People are saying respect, wanting to learn, listening, so forth. Then we get more practical by saying, how do we enforce that? How do we hold people accountable to those values? And then when the conversation inadvertently went off the rails because we received some shocking news headline, then we had a structure through which we can return to the agreements that people had already set instead of me looking like I'm arbitrarily imposing my agenda in a kind of authoritarian way on people and getting them to conform. So that's the format I like to do, and acknowledging that there were a lot of strong feelings, there are a lot of strong reactions, and to make it not seem like we're abruptly cutting people off, going out to coffee, offering follow-up conversation, even if they don't take you up on it, the gesture is usually appreciated, right? You're making an offering to hold space for them, allowing them to decompress. If it's personal, getting into that more personal part of it and kind of holding space for that is often appreciated and gives it allows the conversation to unfold outside of the context of a meeting where you're not supposed to talk about that.
I think it's important to note that this simulation was condensed, right? Because normally people are probably going to follow those guidelines or expectations once we immediately set them. But, but I guess what the point of simulation is trying to draw is that just because we have them doesn't always mean that people are people can always forget them. Or when shocking things like that happen or strong feelings come in, sometimes those go out the window. And it's, would you advise like kind of even periodically revisiting these guidelines and ground rules that are collectively crafted?
Yeah, in some cases, it's done at the beginning of every meeting.
Okay.
I know some groups where they'll have a whole ground rule design session, and then they'll actually print it out on a piece of paper that's very aesthetically pleasing, and then they'll actually hand it out to everyone, and people will agree to follow them during the discussion. Yeah, so it depends on the context and the nature of the group, but you can get and it's not only, I want to say too, it's not like we're trying to enforce these and you have to, when you emphasize the values and the virtues that you're trying to cultivate, reading the ground rules together again is actually kind of an inspirational practice. It generates momentum to have a good discussion. So I call them aspirational virtues, not only like rules to follow.
Thanks, Ryan.
Great, thank you everyone. Now we can get back to 2 Corinthians.